Listen, I've never had any problem expressing my opinions, but what we're doing here is bigger than that. These are conversations that need to be had in an unfiltered way. Drag racing's all I've ever done. It's all I care to do. I respect the history, I appreciate how far we've come, but I want more for this sport, and I'll fight for it. It's uncut, it's unfiltered, this is the show of shows. The biggest names in drag racing. No holds barred. This is the great American motorsport, drag racing. Prove me wrong, I'll wait. To gamble or not to gamble? I think that's the question of the day today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Wes Buck here, Drag Illustrated Magazine, checking in. It is Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024. Hope you're doing well, fresh off a wild weekend in the sport of drag racing. As always, I'm joined today by my partners in crime, Mike Carpenter, JT Hudson. What's up, boys? I'm going to be leaning on you a lot today. A lot. We are well out of my wheelhouse when it comes to sports gambling, but I'm excited to talk about this because I think it has significant implications for the sport of drag racing, and it's a hot topic. I was really surprised how polarizing, I guess, it's been over the course of the last couple of days as news has broke that NHRA is making progress. I'm going to lean on you guys to kind of decipher how far down the road we are. We're going to be joined in just a few minutes, I believe about 2:30, by Rex Simmermaker from Winlight Bets, as well as Elon Werner from Drag Race Bracket Bonanza, a couple of experts in the field, and we can lean on them, Mike. But, I mean, you've been through, for those that don't know, NHRA made
sorry, I was late.
News.
I was shaving.
Oh, my God.
Oh, who is this guy?
You literally look like I put the glasses on. Do you have your glasses?
Oh, yes, I do, Sonny.
You do look 400 years old right now.
Do I really?
But when you posted that photo on Facebook yesterday, you looked like you're 26.
Yeah,
Blake's
I think
age.
I think it was the filter on the selfie or something. It was really
there wasn't a filter on that selfie.
T and I don't believe in filters, Mike.
Oh, okay.
No, we're anti-filter.
Yeah, T, I don't know what happened there, man. Maybe you didn't want your true identity exposed. If we're going to talk about gambling, you didn't want
that what it is?
You didn't want your bookie to recognize you.
Do you have a
bookie's
bookie
like,
after you?
That dude T that I take them bets from over in Missouri? He's got a beard and wears sunglasses, and
that's right. Yeah,
wild looking guy. Typically got some version.
You do that.
Of a mohawk
You do that at the end of a season though, so you don't have to pay the sons of bitches. You know what I mean? I don't ever let myself get too deep with a bookie. Like,
what's
you
deep?
Set a price.
Is deep.
You just need to set a price and then settle up. When one of you hit it, settle up. I know that you can let it ride and play on house money, but you never want to get too deep either way, because even with the bookie, eventually you may make a bid. Well, you may make a big bet. Say they owe you, and then now go try to get your money from them.
This. I guess we'll talk about this today, but the online sports betting apps have kind of made the bookie a little bit irrelevant. I don't know. I've never dealt with a bookie. I know you've got experience with that, but it's basically like we didn't gamble, we didn't bet here in North Carolina until it was legalized just earlier this year. And now
you didn't.
The people did. No, I didn't. I mean, me, like people I know. And
now you're like a professional. Mike is like a professional gambler.
And that's part of what we'll talk about today. It's addictive. There's a lot of implications to it, good and bad. And we've talked about how drag racing needs that hook in people. Like
some of the greatest advice I ever got was from one of my buddy's dads, and I beat him. I forget, maybe it was at golf or something, or maybe it was in the bar or at pool or something. But he said, "JT, let me tell you something. Gambling money has no home."
That's
exactly how he said it too.
With the beardless T.
Yeah, it was Jimmy Bragg. Gambling money has no home, JT. And he's right. Like as soon as you think that you're up and you got it figured out, man.
I'm going to read this real quick. For those that don't
you.
know what's going on, I think it's important to take a second here and catch folks up. On the 16th, 5-6 days ago, the NHRA put a press release out that reads the headline, "Play NHRA initiative will allow fans access to fantasy games, gaming, and betting for NHRA national events." And I'll burn through this, but I think it's important just for the context of today's conversation that NHRA announced an exciting and landmark step forward for the company with the launch of Play NHRA, an innovative new initiative that will provide fans opportunities to engage in fantasy games, gaming, and betting for NHRA Mission Foods Drag Racing Series events. As part of Play NHRA, NHRA's partnership with leading sports books and fantasy sports providers will enable fans to sign up for free and legally wager on national events and other outcomes in the NHRA Drag Racing Series. Odds will be released and wagers will be accepted beginning with the Super Grip NHRA Thunder Valley Nationals, which takes place June 7th through 9th at Bristol Dragway.
Is that the very next national event, or is there one between?
There's Epping and then Bristol. So,
oh, yeah. Okay. So right after Epping.
Yeah, we got a quote in here from NHRA's Chief Development Officer, Brad Gerber. This initiative will provide a destination for fans to enjoy the safest and most regulated place to bet on NHRA drag racing, participate in fantasy games, and engage with our sport in so many new ways. And here's kind of like I found this interesting. As part of the Play NHRA initiative, NHRA has partnered with an industry-leading firm, IC360, to educate employees, race teams, and other stakeholders about sports betting and to maintain the integrity of the sport through data intelligence, fraud prevention, and monitoring of wagering patterns. NHRA is committed to maintaining the integrity of our sport by partnering with IC360 as well as licensed and regulated sportsbook and fantasy operators. NHRA will ensure everyone who engages with Play NHRA will enjoy a safe and well-regulated betting and gaming environment. This is a vital step forward in the creation and rollout of NHRA or Play NHRA. So I guess, I'm going to kind of lean on you guys, like I said at the start of the show, because the integrity of all of this, I think, is paramount, correct? Like, just,
it is, yeah.
And there's drag racing it's a wild animal, right? I mean, it's just not, it is, I don't know. I'm just kind of curious, like, where do you think this is headed? How soon? I mean, I've read that press release before, but upon rereading it, I realized that this is bearing right down on us. We're 2 races away. Does that mean am I to interpret this as there will be odds and wagering?
I guess so. There actually already were. They were on Caesar's Sportsbook app up until now for Top Fuel only. They had
Caesars or was it Caesars or MGM?
I think it was Caesars. Yeah, okay. They had it on there in a very limited fashion. But this sounds like it's NHRA like trying to get their arms around the situation and get a hold of it before it like just goes out unregulated. It's like you said, drag racing is a wild beast. We've talked with Rex, we've talked with Elon about the challenges of trying to do even a daily fantasy type game or a ladder game like Elon's around NHRA but it's NHRA Pro classes are like the only classes where you could possibly have like enough data and enough pre-entry information to build a bet out or what's the word I'm looking for? Build odds out. You could never do this for any other sanctioning body or any other class. It would probably just have to be the pro classes in NHRA. And even then it's changes
still hard.
so much week to week. But the interesting thing to me, I did that. Well, let's back up. All of us here at Drag Illustrated received emails from this IC360 basically telling us that we had to take this training course and enroll in this safety deal and receive a certificate of completion by May 31st. And apparently I did it today. And you got to go through, watch these videos, listen to these instructions, and answer a quiz, and they'll send you a certification or whatever. And it's a little bit vague to me so far, like reading through the details, if media members actually apply to, or this applies to media. It's basically applying to all NHRA stakeholders. So that means owners, teams, drivers, crew chiefs, crew members, team PR reps. As far as us being an independent media outlet, I don't know 100% if that's going to apply to us, but it does say that NHRA
doesn't apply to me.
Yeah. No, Jason, you're exactly right.
They,
because
they,
it
did
says,
not, they said I wasn't real media anyway. So
that's right.
They can,
but you actually listen, that you may get a pass because it says outside of these identified people, anyone that NHRA identifies and awards certain credentials and passes to is included in this. So the way I'm reading that is, if you have a hard card, maybe, or if you get a single race credential as a media member to NHRA, you can't bet on NHRA. And there's all kinds of stuff in there about the data that they have. It says we have data on everyone and everyone's name, including you. It's like kind of threatening. Basically, a potential lifetime ban, fines, all kinds of stuff for betting on NHRA or even influencing the outcome of a race, which kind of opens up a whole nother can of worms that we've talked about, in the sport of drag racing, team orders. We've seen some potential team orders, whether that gets admitted to or not, between teammates, with point implications or championship implications. How does this now, the way, if you read the gambling policy for NHRA, implementing team orders could potentially result in impropriety of this whole gambling deal and be subject to fines or bans. So I think at the end of the day, it's like you said, Wes, when we started talking about this, NHRA has so many variables, so many people come and go. You might have some dude on your crew for the first time that weekend that's never, you've never had on your team, or you might lose a crew member. And keeping up with all of this and who's allowed to bet and who isn't, and same with the media, and where all these things that are specific to drag racing, like team orders, is the first thing that comes to my mind. You create a whole nother thing. It's got a lot of unique aspects to it that stick and ball sports do not, that I'm actually really interested to hear what Elon and Rex have to say about this more than anything, because I know they poured over this info and it affects them directly as much as anything. So before I get off my rant here, because I had all this information, the actual gambling policy, I had it in front of me here. And this affects Rex and Elon, and definitely this is what we need to ask them as soon as they jump on here. It basically outlaws what Rex and Elon are doing, to my knowledge right now, as it pertains to awarding prizes. I think it would allow them to continue to run their leagues as long as they're not awarding any kind of prizes over $500. It's the language is a little bit confusing once you dive into it, but it seems to have a carve out in here that could affect and enforce changes for Elon and Rex right off the get-go. These guys have been working on these platforms and just launched them in the last year or two and are having success with it.
Yeah, but they've done
now they've got this.
Like Rex has done his due diligence. I know. Yeah. He can do whatever the hell he wants, really. I mean, like the NHRA can't tell him what he can and can't do.
Maybe outside of NHRA,
the government can.
Let me read it to you.
Law, but
why don't you read it? Because I'm lost as all hell. I mean, all of this to me, the reason I'm throwing a bunch of comments up on the screen is because it does seem to be a really polarizing thing. Like I was genuinely shocked how much disdain for this idea there was online.
Not here, brother.
Like this
gambling's
right
awesome. Like it lets you put skin in the game, man. It's awesome.
For sure. For fans. And it is a great engagement tool for fans, but because drag racing is such a participant-driven sport, it is going to outlaw.
It's going to be tough. We've talked about it
for
people
years. From participating in it. Like this B from the D right here, he says, "I don't understand how you can't bet on yourself." That's like rule number one. That's like the first thing that it says. You basically are,
I think is absolute bullshit. I think
you're basically
banned. Yeah. Didn't Ryan Garcia in that boxing match against Devin Haney a couple of weeks ago, like quite publicly bet $1 million on himself to win? I'm fairly certain he did.
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think that's legal.
No, I think he did. Ryan.
But listen to this. So, a lot of the policy is pretty straightforward and pretty like common sense stuff. And again, we'll have to talk to our two guests once they jump on here, but there is a line item in here: fantasy leagues. Fantasy leagues are contests in which players assemble fictional teams of real-world competitors from professional sports, with the winners determined by reference to the stats of those real-world competitors. Some fantasy contests last an entire season. Some are as short as a day. Some fantasy leagues offer cash and other prizes, and some require an entry fee. Participation by covered stakeholders in NHRA fantasy leagues that award cash prizes or other things of value could create an actual or perceived conflict of interest. Covered stakeholders may also be perceived to have an unfair advantage due to their preferential access to information in certain instances. As a result, covered stakeholders are prohibited from participating in NHRA fantasy leagues that offer cash or other prizes, except for leagues that do not award cash prizes or other things of value, or award cash prizes or things of value valued at less than $500. Covered stakeholders are permitted to participate in fantasy leagues that involve non-NHRA sports, so long as those fantasy leagues are legal where they are offered.
But that's just a select group of people that are involved. That's that's not. I mean, that's the players, I guess, as the racers, correct? I mean, like, that's how it is in other sports. The players aren't allowed, right? I mean,
well, that's what I'm going back to, because I found on www.beinsports. I don't know if this is like I feel like Joe Rogan reading some random.
Well, let me answer. I'll answer JT's question really quick.
Okay.
This policy applies to all NHRA employees, officers, and directors. And then it has another line item: participants and owner groups, as those terms are defined in the NHRA rulebook. So, and holders of certain credentials and passes as determined by NHRA. Participants includes team owners, drivers, crew persons, and any person or entity that has any ownership interest in a race team, vehicle, or otherwise. For purposes of this policy, the persons described in A, B, and C are hereafter collectively referred to as covered stakeholders. NHRA reserves the right to pursue legal or disciplinary action under this policy based on gambling conduct against any person or entity, even if that person or entity is not defined above as a covered stakeholder. So it's very broad.
Like everybody, bro.
It really
is like the airplane kid,
man. I don't think I got all that. Can you run through that one more time?
It's one of those things you can't read out loud and comprehend. But what I'm telling you, if you sit down and read this, and we'll get more clarification. We may even need to talk with someone at NHRA about this. But again, this all just hit us, and we got these emails this week, and we were all kind of going, does this mean that once I sign this or go through this deal that I can no longer bet on NHRA? Because I don't have any ownership interest in any team or anything. And I know that some people that we know were betting on the deal on the app because this policy was not in effect. But as of whatever, May 31st, when this goes into effect, to me, it says, obviously, anyone that participates in the actual event is prohibited, but media and anyone kind of loosely involved. So it's going to be interesting. And the fact that drag racing is so participant driven and changes on a dime as far as who's at what race and who's participating and who's on whose team, that this is going to be like this IC360 company may not know what they just signed up for.
Here's where I'd like to start is, first and foremost, while again, I think that there's a lot of people with a lot of opinions about this, I do see it as a positive. Like, I saw a comment from a near and dear friend of ours, Joe McHugh, longtime senior photographer here at Drag Illustrated. If you need gambling to be interested, do something else. And I respect that, because
that's a fair stance.
It is a fair stance, but at the same time, I do recognize in this day and age, it's a real, I go back to the horse racing thing. I remember going to Prairie Meadows in Des Moines, Iowa, bored out of my mind, nowhere to go, no friends. My buddy Rock Carzoli and I would go up there on Thursday nights and take $12 and get to bet on all the horse races. And all of a sudden it made Thursday night pretty exciting because I had skin in the game, as you said earlier. I mean, I think it's an important next step that has to happen. But what I'm like hearing what you just said, Mike, like all the early momentum is likely going to come from the people that are on the fringe of involvement.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like people that have a little bit of a connection to a team or have crew guys, all this stuff. And I mean, if you walk around the pits, pretty much everybody there is going to tell you that they're connected to a team.
Exactly. No one, we talk about all the time.
Person
No one wants to be a fan.
Nobody wants to be a fan.
Everyone is there. No, I'm here with so-and-so and I'm on so-and-so's team and so-and-so got me in.
I'm not working on the car this weekend, but normally I do the bottom end on, it's like everybody's kind of halfway connected to someone, or they're there kind of looped in with a certain group of guys. So I think it's going to
think about people trying to set odds on this deal. Because everybody that's most people that are involved around drag racing that know a lot about it are involved with somebody, either the media, the team, or something. And so that means that your odds are probably gonna be shit.
Yeah, and I don't want to shit can this deal, because I do think it's exciting. I've seen what fantasy football and then daily fantasy and then now actual gambling has done for the NFL,
fantasy
the NBA.
Football. If you go back to when fantasy football started, that was the NFL was kind of in a little bit of a lull, and and it blew up. Like, it made people start watching the other teams.
It's huge.
Like, you watch your team every weekend, right, with your buddies or whatever. Well, now you're tuning in on Thursday night, you're tuning in on Sunday night, you're tuning in on Monday night. You're watching all these other games. You're buying the Red Zone channel.
Yeah.
You're buying the NFL package.
Because you're invested.
The money goes a long way. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what NHRA needs. And we've talked about that.
Hey, Rex is in the green room here. Let's bring him in.
There's one more.
Keep talking, Mike. We'll let you keep talking. Okay?
There's one more thing I wanted to talk about before we get Rex, because Rex is going to have a ton of good info. And I definitely want to get his opinion on this as well. But the team orders thing and fixing and manipulation is one of the most interesting lines in this. It says covered stakeholders must always give their best effort in connection with any NHRA race, run, series, or event. Failing to give best effort or soliciting, encouraging, or inducing anyone to not give best effort for any purpose is prohibited.
What if you're in the countdown?
It's going to be,
and you're trying to position yourself on the ladder, or and
yep.
We saw that for years, right?
For me, and as we bring our guest into the show today, I'm excited to have these guys. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, we've got Rex Simmermaker from Winlight Bets going to be joining us, along with Elon Werner from Drag Race Bracket Bonanza. I'm excited to get their input, but I will say that what you said about fantasy sports and its impact on football in the NFL specifically, JT, I think really resonates with me, because I feel our sport has long since been way behind the curve when it comes to building stars and getting people invested in specific drivers. And I think that if sports gambling is a pathway towards increasing that and putting more focus on the individuals that are involved, the guys and gals that are behind the wheel, I'm here for it, because that was something that happened during fantasy sports that traditional stick and ball sports fans were kind of opposed to, as people didn't necessarily cheer for their team, they cheered for their players. And while I can see that it's got, there's some people that's somewhat resistant or a little sour about that looking back or retrospectively, personally, when I look at our sport and where we're at and the bad need we have for developing stars and getting people more invested, more engaged with the men and women behind the wheel, this could be a massive solution. I mean, it could serve as a solution to a problem that I don't know that they're especially aware of, nor have they really made any progress towards solving. So there's so many things, in my opinion, that can be impacted by sports gambling. Let's hear it from the experts. Rex, Elon in the green room. We'll bring these guys in. Thank you all so much for joining us. Go ahead. We can go five wide, JT.
Yeah,
don't want
five wide.
I'll bounce out every now and then.
No, we need you in here.
Man.
Guys, this is the week I'd like to not be on here.
Yeah. If you want to bounce out,
called in shaved.
Yeah, called in shaved.
What's your reason for missing the show? Shaved
this morning.
I just need to know if we're going to keep JT or whoever this imposter is in my upper right hand corner, because I'm just going to get a Sharpie out and just draw right on my.
Let's leave him there.
I do have a
just a Sharpie beard for him.
I told him to go grab some shoe polish and just fill it in a little bit so it's not so harsh. But Elon, Rex, welcome to the show. Elon, you're a longtime friend of Drag Illustrated. You've been a regular here on the Wes Buck Show over the years. Rex, I think we've had you on here once before, but I'm excited to have you back. And it's obviously gambling and sports betting, huge news right now. NHRA made major announcement on May 16th, just a few days ago, that it looks like they're taking some significant steps towards bringing sports betting to the sport of drag racing, specifically the NHRA Mission Foods Drag Racing Series. I guess there's so much to cover here, but I guess I would like to know just kind of like initial knee-jerk kind of reactions. Rex, you're one of the freshest faces here, so I'll throw it to you, other than JT, obviously. I'll throw it to you first. I mean, when you heard of this, I mean, I'm sure you're a very connected guy and you operate on the inside, so you probably knew this was coming. But what was just your like initial reaction? Is this like oh great, finally happening, or you sons of bitches, or how did you feel about this?
No, I appreciate you having me back on, Wes. And my initial reaction is it's about time. So these conversations have been going on for about 9 months, to my knowledge. I knew the guys from Alt. I know them fairly well. Knew they were working on this. Actually thought they were going to announce at PRI that this was going to happen. So from my standpoint, and I think Wes, you share this thought. You've mentioned before, and I know we've talked, but it's necessary for us for two ways. One is that just the world we live in terms of if people can't make legal wagers on things right now, they think it's scripted or they think it doesn't matter. And so from my opinion, I think this is a great step for the NHRA. Certainly, I don't think this precludes Winlight Bets from working with the NHRA at all long term. I mean, if you think about it, it doesn't take too long to realize that you can make wagers at FanDuel and DraftKings and BetMGM and Caesars, et cetera, on the NFL. So this is not much different in my opinion, but I'm glad to see that it's made the next step.
Elon, did you have like a similar reaction with the bout time? I feel like I've heard that quite a bit in recent days.
Yeah, and I think I know they've been working on it for a long time. I think it is something we have to have. I think that's where the world is. You're looking at, where we need to go. I'm in a little different lane on the, kind of on the fantasy bracket side, but I do think being able to have people more invested, both literally and figuratively, in the sport and the drivers is something the sport needs. And, I've seen some of the data that Alt that is brought to the table that NHRA has about just the demographics of people that are placing sports bets. They are not necessarily in our demo. They're younger than some of our traditional fans. And I think if we can show them an opportunity to get involved with a sport, have some fun, get more embedded with the sport, that's only good for everybody.
How do you
Hard
guys
to argue.
Yeah, I agree totally. How do you guys see this affecting you and your businesses that you've started? I mean, you guys kind of predate NHRA getting involved in this in separate ways. And I think, Rex, we've talked about how it was such a hurdle to climb to try to launch a betting or fantasy league when it relates to NHRA or drag racing, because it's so fragmented and so disjointed and kind of unpredictable. And I don't know if you guys have taken the education course or whatever, but we were talking about that at the beginning of the show. And how does any of this policy and any of these rules, does it affect you guys, your products as they exist currently, or any of your future plans? And how are you guys going to have to adapt or navigate that?
Well, I think really Rex is in a better spot than me, because like he alluded to, he will be the McDonald's to the Burger King to the Wendy's of the gaming universe. Drag Race Bracket Bonanza is kind of more off to the side of chicken, like Kentucky Fried Chicken. Like there's the big burger joints, and then if you don't want hamburgers, come over here and enjoy some fried chicken. That's I think it's ultimately going to be really, hopefully, I think it will be good for both of us. I think it's going to be good for Rex because he's the guy that landed on the moon first. He planted his flag and has built a great brand and has delivered a product on the gaming side that people can trust and know. And he's got, I think he has, a familiarity with the people behind the scenes and on the track. For me, I like it because we guys were talking, I think earlier, fantasy is a gateway drug to gambling. Drag Race Bracket Bonanza is a passion project of mine. I want to keep it kind of in its lane right now, which is still, I have to keep telling myself, you're not even a year into Drag Race Bracket Bonanza yet. I don't even know what it is. But some tent poles for me are I want to keep it free. I want to keep so kids can play and keep it, big tent where junior dragster people can play. Competitive crew guys can play Drag Race Bracket Bonanza without stepping on the NHRA rules because our game doesn't affect the outcome of the event and there's no money changing hands.
Yeah, because it's covered in the fantasy leagues carve out of the gambling policy. And I wondered how that affected you specifically, Elon.
Yeah.
It's basically saying that you can't award cash prizes.
Correct.
Or if the cash prize has to be smaller than $500.
Correct. And that's where, and it's funny because I really appreciate, the NHRA, I feel like made that rule with Drag Race Bracket Bonanza, at least in mind or in their universe, because I had conversations with people at the NHRA that were like, hey, as this was kind of slowly coming together, they're like, okay, you're going to be okay. Your prizes are all less than $500, which they are. Cause I'm basically, I'm providing them for every race.
So that number was chosen kind of based on what you were doing.
I think it was at least in a conversation. I don't know that it was definitely specific to me, but it was just hey, here's kind of where we want to kind of, and that's kind of, I think that's probably a generic number.
Yeah.
That's a reasonable number. So,
well, that's good to hear because when I read it, just kind of glancing over it, I was like, don't tell me this is going to affect Elon's deal, or they're going to basically make it so that participating in Elon's deal has the same type of penalty as participating in the NHRA gambling.
That's been probably the quickest thing. I'll let Rex get a word in here edgewise, but how many people, when the word came out, how many people sent me texts, got on Twitter and were like, hey, I want to, I hope this doesn't affect you, or how, and I was, very appreciative of that. I think we're moving in the right direction. So that for us has been huge. And I actually was at my son's last Friday college graduation when I got the email. And since we were there early, I actually did the course. And Brad Gerber told me I was the first NHRA person to complete the course.
That is hilarious.
Congratulations.
I was like, but I think that's important. I think, the course was pretty straightforward. It was funny. There's like a 6-question test at the end.
Yeah. And
I'm not I do fantasy. I'll bet, some money maybe with a buddy, but not like anything major. Have never placed an actual. And so I took the 6-question test, and it was one of the questions was about a favorite. Are they the plus or the minus? And I missed it the first time. And then I was like, so I got like an 83% passing. I retook the test again and still couldn't remember and missed it again. That's where my level of gambling skill comes in. And I finally was like, okay, I'm just going to take an 83% and walk away.
Yeah, that's what you have to pass. I actually sent some screenshots in here. I don't know if JT's going to upload them as, the whole process that you have to go through and take that test. But so you're basically saying that crew members, media, everyone, they can participate in Drag Race Bracket Bonanza.
As understanding the rules as they've been presented to me, anyone can play Drag Race Bracket Bonanza. Drivers, crew guys, media people, and I do not know of any driver that is playing. I love the fact that they promote it and they support the prizes, but I do know there are crew guys, there's media people, Kelly Crandall, Ryan McGee, Deb Williams. I think there's photographers.
Our whole team here at Drag.
Yeah, we all participate in it. Everyone I know does, and that's what kind of is sad now, because now that I filled out this deal, I can't bet on NHRA anymore, right? Because I think that they're including credentialed media members or hard card members.
If you have a hard card, then that's where I think their kind of umbrella.
You're good, JT.
I'm good. And you guys can.
They denied JT's credentials, so he is just basking.
We sent a hard card application in for JT, and they approved. And for most of our team, they approved everyone except JT. So
and Brett.
They must have known that this was coming, JT, and they did you a favor.
Yeah, I know. I'm grateful. And then you guys will be Venmoing me and be like, place my bet, bro. You know?
Well, I mean, I can't remember what the question was to Elon initially that we wanted to hear from Rex, but real quick, Rex, why don't you just riff on like immediate impact on Winlight bets? And, you talked about in the Burger King, McDonald's, Wendy's analogy, I think was solid because it's obviously the case in real, not real, but like other sports betting, you can bet a multitude of places. But what about the real dollars and cents thing? Because hasn't that been like the real hurdle for you, Rex, that actually being able to move beyond the points or like fun prizes? I don't know what the word is, like non-cash prizes, because the action's going to happen when money's changing hands. And that's something that you've been working on for as long as I have known you, which is years now. So
Correct.
Like, why don't you give me a little insight as you talked about maybe working on this? They've been working on this for 9 months. So that makes some sense, but how did they get to this point or how did this happen? I mean, I get like so quickly. And again, how does it impact Winlight?
Yeah. So truthfully, I think it's good for Winlight Bet. I think it's really, really good. There's a reason why CVS's are right next to Walgreens, and that there is that psychology of that action. And the NHRA is the big dog, but they're not the only one. There's a lot of great associations out there that have really great competition and probably could really utilize this stuff. So from our standpoint, for instance, we just announced a renewing partnership with the WDRA, and we really like that association. They're great, and we, like all the other associations, have good relationships with everybody, and we're methodically bringing that action to all the other associations. But there's a reason why this took a little while, and it's because there's a lot of regulatory things that just have to be worked through. And you kind of made mention of some of that stuff earlier before we came on about how team orders could be affected. I mean, there were rules in the NHRA book about that before, but it was loosely enforced, right? So now you have a new level of enforcement, which is pretty fascinating, I think, from that standpoint. But what I will tell you, Wes, is that we are days away from finalizing our Serie A round, and so that brings our real money project to life. So we've been working on this for a long time. Have our prototype. It's finished, but there are some liquidity rules, meaning that if I had too many people go onto a website or to an application and it broke, and you, Wes, you had put in $200 and it overloaded the site and you couldn't bring your winnings out of it, then there would be some real legal implications for me. And you know me well enough to know that I want to spend 0 days in a state penitentiary. So I'm working very hard to make sure that that our app is really solid. So when we bring it out, and we needed to finalize the Serie A. I think we're very, very close, just dotting some I's, doing some paperwork, and then we will have that out this summer at some point. And I'll have more announcements here shortly. But yeah, it's kind of long road, but we're very, very close to being done, and I couldn't be more excited about announcing that here shortly. But I just don't think this affects us at all. Do we want to work with the NHRA? Absolutely. But we have a different product than what the guys at Alt will bring for them. We just do. And frankly, I wish them well. I want no part of setting fixed rate odds on John DeFlorian and Erica Ender's first round. I want no part of setting those odds, and good luck to those people who think they can.
So you're saying that Alt is Alt the company that's going to set the odds and produce the app that I assume will be coming? So is that the company that NHRA is going to work with to facilitate all that?
So my conversation with Alt have been the way they've always explained themselves to me is that they are the manufacturer of the product. So they're not Walmart. They're not the retail look. DraftKings, FanDuel's are the retail look. That's where the customer buys the product. Alt creates fixed rate products that they then sell to DraftKings and FanDuel. And then once the money starts coming in, then FanDuel and DraftKings can move their lines, right? They, just when they see it's real heavy on the favorite or whatever, they can move the lines. But Alt sets those lines, and that's why they're the data provider. And I think they're going to do some other stuff. I think it's great. Really, I mean, I know those guys well enough to know that I know they do a good job. And I think they're going to bring some other data to the mix that will be interesting and brings the fans closer, which is what all this stuff does.
Yeah, and I mean, that's if you go through the training deal, it kind of explains some of the bets that you could expect to see. There's obviously the money line bet, which is essentially your left lane, right lane bet at the track. The guy's holding the money up on the right or the left. That's your money line bet. Their reaction time is a potential prop bet. Which of these two drivers will have a better reaction time? Who's going to have the best reaction time of eliminations, things like that. Maybe there'll be some performance related prop bets. But it is interesting and kind of speaks to the scale of this, that by working with these companies, packaging up these odds, and then getting this on the DraftKings or FanDuel or Caesars platform, that NHRA is going to be right there with all these other big name properties and getting that exposure, which is to me the big upshot and the positive to come out of this. Whether you like gambling and all the other things, where you stand on all that, the fact that you can go onto these huge mainstream apps and now participate and have skin in the game in NHRA is obviously the end goal.
Not only that, just real quick, not only that, but if people are on there, and this will bring in a lot of people that aren't necessarily diehard drag racing fans, right? They're just, okay, Sunday, the race is on, I'm gonna be watching it, and if they get this stuff more live or NHRA TV or whatever, or maybe they have a local bar and they ask the owner, hey, can you purchase NHRA TV for one of the TVs in here? I like to place bets on this stuff. Now you're going to the whole audience in that bar as well. I mean, it could really catch some eyes.
Well, I mean, for me, it's guilty by association. Like, I saw a comment earlier that it's like, this is not necessarily revolutionary. I mean, there has been betting many times, but I think it's exciting just to be. I mean, that's a question I ask, or that I'm asked fairly frequently. Oh, do they bet on those deals, or is there betting on that? And I'm like, no. And it does kind of make me feel like somewhat less than these other sports. So it feels long overdue in that regard. And I think, to your point, JT, there's some, people just stumbling across it. I mean, I actually remember how important it was for Flow Racing. I mean, this is a brand that was really making a hard push into drag racing. It took 2 or 3 years for them to add drag racing to their navigation on their website. And it was impactful just having that button up there along circle track racing and sports or whatever else they had along the navigation on their site. So I think it's good to just be in the conversation. One of the things that come to mind really quickly is how difficult I believe it may well be to police this.
Yes.
As far as, I mean, and I'm not throwing stones, but it's the nature of what we try to do here is have conversations that no one else is willing to have in a public setting and live with the consequences, right? And we're not always right. And sometimes I think we've been wrong on a multitude of occasions of instances. And I'm cool with that because at least we're having the conversation. But I do wonder, at a time where there seems to be a lot of, I mean, we've had this huge debacle a couple of races ago with Bob Tasca's intake manifold. And, there was, a lot of questions regarding that. And we've heard about, multiple reports from team owners, drivers, crew members about lack of tech officials and not having enough manpower to adequately police this and provide the communication and the transparency that is expected in 2024 when it comes to professional sports. And I just can't help but wonder, has NHRA, are they prepared to make the investment necessary, human resources wise, just to live up to this handbook they send out? Because personally, I'm going, give me a fucking break. There's no chance they're going to be able to keep up with this.
And on top of that, regulate who's participating in it. And that's that. I would love to get both of you guys' opinion on that, especially you, Rex, because we talk about the Wild West. Like Wes is trying to say, create a more, I guess, predictable or competitive environment, regulated environment, I guess you'd say, to bet on. And you are kind of trying to wrap your arms around, like we talked about, smaller associations, pro mod racing, all kinds of stuff that you're getting involved in, which is going to be even more of a challenge in that regard. So I guess just talk to us about how is this, drag racing kind of being the Wild West? How are we going to get this under control to where it is able to be reliably bet on?
Because this is not a freak incident. Like, it happens. I mean, Elon, you've heard it 10,000 times. The team order situation, people laying up in qualifying to kind of position themselves in a certain way on the ladder for race day. I mean, there's a lot of ways this game is played beyond reaction times and ETs and speeds, right? I mean, there's a lot of different, and we've seen teams be rather vocal that the whole reason they have multiple cars is so they can do that type of thing, and somewhat lean on a teammate or whatever. If I mean, we've seen it multitude of times, and not everybody's super transparent about it, some more so than others, but it's not an impossible scenario to cook up this fall, an instance where, I mean, Pro Stock's perhaps the best example because there's so many cars aligned with so few teams, but you got basically the entire field being contested by two behemoth race operations. What happened? I mean, I just don't know that overnight that type of behavior is going to go away where, hey, I'm going to push the clutch in at 1,000 foot and let them run by me because I'm not in the hunt for the points and my teammate is. Like, that's been a big part of our sport for a long time, somewhat a trained behavior. And I just don't know how quickly that changes. Elon, I'll throw it to you. I mean, your thoughts on team orders, strategic qualifying efforts, et cetera?
I think the cool thing is this U.S. integrity company that they've hired that has all kinds of data capture about who's betting, how much they're betting. They'll start building a database of kind of going back to one of your questions of how do you regulate who bets? They will be quickly building a profile and betting patterns to catch any irregularities.
Yeah.
I think on the participant side, now that they know the penalties could be very severe, I mean, they made it very clear in the rules that if you are caught and it can be proven that you affected the outcome, I think the first warning is a lifetime ban from the sport. So those kind of things, but even now you're seeing the prop bets in other sports where can a guy go over 35 points or under 35 points? That can easily be manipulated by your teammates of just feeding one guy the ball. So there's I think there's going to be a lot of understanding. We have to play this straight up. And I think it has gotten better. And I would say the last 3 or 4 years, you brought up Pro Stock. There were some instances in the past, but I think that now that we have people gambling, that will just be self-regulated, I feel, because of the fear of having someone from the outside come in and say, this is an irregularity, you need to investigate this, versus an NHRA person. My only question on the whole regulation side is, they're very adamant in the class or the online class about, anyone can report, PR people, crew guys, you're basically can't pass on information to other teams. It's if someone were to hear something, who do you report it to? Is that an NHRA competition person, i.e. Ned Wallace or Josh Peterson? Is it, someone in the PR department? Is there going to be a separate entity in the NHRA? Is it going to be a hotline? Is it going to be U.S. integrity? But how it hasn't really been made clear that once this thing gets started and you do hear something or see something, what is the reporting process?
I'm anxious to see what that's going to be as well, because knowing drag racers the way I do, that's going to be, phone number is going to ring a lot.
Oh,
I mean, because that's where so many of these hubbubs are generated, is conversations in the pits.
It's like a protest.
Running really good.
A protest is going to go through the gambling process now, right? I mean, could get really hairy. Rex, give us your take on the questions we proposed a minute ago, because I know you've got some good info on all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is responsible gaming, both on the associate association side and from a personal wagering side. And so, what we've done for the last, really year is really work hard to make sure that both responsible gaming for our individual bettors is something that we can monitor. And then from the association side, really what you can't have is you can't have a competitor win more money by losing the race. And so there are, and Elon, you mentioned it, just betting patterns. So within that stuff, we monitor everything. And it's easier today to monitor everything, especially as it's all online or through an app, to monitor that stuff. And that's what US Integrity and we will do internally anyway. And most public wagering sports books, they all have internal people monitoring all that stuff along with US Integrity as well. But it has to go with patterns. So if somebody, typically bets $100 on a weekend and all of a sudden they're in it for 10 grand on one race, then, that's,
it's going to throw a red flag or what have you. Yeah. It's, for me, I just know that, if you've ever had, I'm just going to give a couple of examples. So like, how many race teams have you been involved with? Mike, Elon, I'd say this is something that you guys will resonate with you, but your driver red lights. I didn't red light. I did not red light. And they go up there and you've got the camera. You got 3 different video cameras. Look, the car didn't move an inch and it red lit and whatever. I guess I'm just saying that, like, racers, like, if you tell these guys they can't lay down or manipulate the outcome in an obvious, I just wonder what links will be gone to. And like you said, I think, and how will you be able to argue it? Like, what will be, because that's a very serious thing. And so maybe the threat of a lifetime ban is significant enough. I think that's, like you said, Elon, having that kind of be the first strike is like, you're done forever. Maybe that will, because this may be something that really generates a real positive for race fans, because team orders and laying down, like, come October in the Vegas race, Pomona, that is a big topic of conversation. And by all accounts, the fans are not here for it. Like, the fans want to see a heads up drag race. They want to see these guys run wide open. They don't want to see any funny business. So maybe this is just kind of like a natural evolution. It's taken a while, but here we are, and we're going to be held to a higher standard, and everybody's got to buy in. And if you don't buy in, you're out the door immediately. It could be a really positive thing, even if it has no, like tabling fan engagement, tabling the notion of bringing more eyeballs to the sport, all of which are obviously positive things. This could bring an air of integrity to our sport that's been lacking for a while, that is very positive. Like, even if you're completely opposed to gambling, like maybe you're just hard-nosed anti-gambling person, don't believe in it, you may still be able to find some silver lining to this, just in the integrity, the standards being raised.
It's great for the fans all around. The fans really have nothing to lose here. It's everyone else, the participants, the team owners, the drivers, the media even has everything to lose and risk a lifetime ban for this gambling, which, if you just take a step back and put yourself in a team owner position, and you're like, okay, NHRA has implemented this gambling deal that I really had no say in, and now I got to agree to it. I have to be a part of it. What's the upshot for me? And to me, this is the next question is going to be, what is NHRA going to do from a revenue sharing standpoint to incentivize or to make this good for the teams, and explain to them that, okay, guys, this is going to bring in X amount of dollars, and then this is how we're going to share it or help improve our sport or improve payouts, whatever the case may be, so that these teams and these drivers have something to gain from it, not everything to lose. Because right now it's, you slip up, I don't even gamble, but my brother did, and then he didn't realize this, and then now I've got a lifetime ban for something I don't even care about because it fell within the rules of the NHRA gambling policy. That'll be a lot easier to swallow for some people as far as exposing themselves to that risk, if they know that this isn't going to improve their check at the end of the day, which I think is always a question with NHRA, is how is that going to play out?
And Rex hit the nail on the head as far as participant regulation is. When you're winning enough money, when you're an NFL player or NBA player and you're making $50 million a year,
it's easy to do.
It's
right?
easy to resist that urge, even though some guys still do it.
Yeah.
I think for racing, the NHRA did say that, this is very much in its infancy. They're going to crawl before they walk, before they run. But they were very upfront that when this does become a revenue maker, they will have a plan to get money back to the teams.
Good.
So that is for sure. And that's where they have been very upfront with even the video game and doing things that, when the video game came out, they paid drivers, to be in the game. And here's the shocking thing. And it's just to give you some background. When the video game came out, there were teams that were hemming and hawing. Drivers got paid between $1,500 and $2,500 to use their likeness in that game. And there was still some complaining and everything. I don't know if you saw when the new EA Sport game came out. Now, again, it's a lot larger number of players, but the EA Sport guys each got $500
for college football players.
For college football.
Yeah,
so,
I don't know if you've ever played that NHRA game, but those guys should be pretty thankful they got that.
Right. So we'll set aside what the game is like, but just the NHRA advocated for the drivers to get something out of that was, I really feel, above what the industry average would probably be looked at. Because even at $500 per player, that game's going to make $1 billion. If they could have paid, those guys, so I think that's encouraging, but I think there will be revenue back to the teams eventually. I think
you got to start somewhere. I mean, right? I mean, you got to start somewhere.
Exactly.
So I hope that they're not.
But there has to be. What I'm saying is there has to be something.
Pathway.
Like, go ahead. I would love to have a team owner on here, talk to like Richard Freeman or Greg Anderson or John Force or any of these guys. How do you guys view this? Do you view this as something positive or just another landmine for you guys to potentially step foot on?
But from a revenue standpoint, my guess is that the NHRA has been very clear with the team owners and said, hey, the first year that the NFL allowed legalized sports gaming, merch sales went up 24%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is this thing where the owner should be able to create revenue from merch or whatever else it might be outside of just the gambling. And JT hit on it earlier. Like, it's all the other stuff that creates revenue around this, and that's why it's so popular.
Yeah, I can't argue at all. But I do think that's a really interesting point, Mike, because you're asking all these teams to take a complete kind of different look at this than they have historically. The next question I wanted to kind of throw to the whole group here is, do you think that this will bring rise or get a conversation started around maximum number of entries for teams, or do you think it'll bring back any of those conversations? Because wasn't it, I can't remember what year it was, but it wasn't that long ago that you were only able to field 4 professional teams. I believe we've seen that kind of go to the wayside. We've got Elite Motorsports fielding as many as 8 cars at different times in pro stock. KB in a similar situation, 6 to 8 cars, depending on the race. Do you think that's something that will now be revisited just to kind of reel in some of these situations? I mean, because it's a delicate dance right now. Pro stock specifically wouldn't exist without those 2 teams.
Yeah, and the teams will tell you that they're still adhering to the 4 teams per owner. That Richard, I believe, owns Erica's team, Jeg's team. I think maybe Aaron's basically it's 3 teams. The Quadras are their own team.
Yeah.
They're just being motor supplied by Elite. And, same with KB Titan. There's 3 or 4 core KB Titan teams. The Matt Harfords of the world, the Brandon Fosters.
They're their own deals.
They're their own deal. Just like DSR had 4 funny cars, but then they were motor supplier or did something for Bob Tasca. Right. So he was like an affiliate team. So I think they're still loosely adhering to that rule. But I think that going back to your original point of, ownership of teams and manipulating, I think they're just going to keep a better eye on that. And I'm hopeful that they use some of this new revenue, hopefully from whether it's sponsor revenue or, revenue generated to build, improve their tech department, get a few more tech people, come up with ways to monitor it because they see the growth opportunity in that. And I think that's got to be part of their plan.
Yeah, I agree. And I did want to bring this up because, Mike, we talked about this at the beginning of the show. And this, again, I don't know how accurate this is, but I read that Ryan Garcia bet $2 million on his victory over Devin Haney boxing match a couple of weeks ago, and obviously won the bet. That clearly isn't going to be possible in this particular thing. But is that just something that's, I mean, Rex, you may have the answer on that. Is that something that is specific to combat sports, that is somehow allowed to happen?
Well, it's all in how you write the legalities within your sport.
Okay.
So to me, that seems like a pretty reasonable way to go about it. If you want to bet on yourself, that seems like okay by me. That said, Pete Rose is still not in the Hall of Fame, and he'll take a lie detector test that says that he only bet on the Reds to win. So, from that standpoint, I guess every association will have to make their own decisions, but it'll be interesting from that standpoint. From Winlight Bet standpoint, we look at from a couple different avenues, and then we're going to just again make the limit small enough that there's no reason to over bet it and then lose on purpose.
What do you guys think the timeline for acceptance is, right? Like, you always have, like, every product, there's like the early adopters, right? And then there's the people that follow in immediately behind them, and so on and so forth. What do you think the timeline is, for success? Elon, I'll go to you. Like, do you feel like the opportunity is like the market is ripe? This is something that people are hungry for. That people, I mean, you both have real world examples. You can look at the engagement that you have been able to create with your various products. I mean, how is this something you think people are going to immediately, or is this going to be a process?
I think there's going to be some people that are going to try to do potentially a little bit of a land grab based on their level of expertise, what they think their level of expertise is. I think the first race they're going to have gaming in play is Bristol. And my understanding is they're going to be able to take bets on number one qualifier, race winner, and then I believe they're going to take bets on who you think is going to be the 2024 world champion in the Mission Foods drag each professional category. So those are categories where it's very cut and dry what the outcome is. There's not a lot of gray area, knowing this person's going to be number one qualifier, this person's going to be the race winner, and then you can put money down on who you think is going to be the 2024 champion. And I think they're just going to see for however many races they need to go, and that may be what they just do for the rest of the season, to just see what kind of impact that has. And I think it will be driven very much by how the public reacts to winning and losing. Drag Race Bracket Bonanza, we're seeing improved signups and more play based on people promoting that they got their signed plaques, or Peak has, added autographed or added die-cast cars for the Chicago winners. Drivers are giving us stuff. So when we see like the social community recognizing, hey, I got this really cool autographed plaque, or I got extra decals, or I got an autographed Antron Brown hat, that just raises the awareness, and people are like, oh, I want to do this. I think when you see a guy maybe wins $700 because he is the first guy to, when Gage Herrera eventually loses in Pro Stock Motorcycle and someone has picked Chase Van Zandt or Angie Smith or Gianna to win, and they win $2,000, that's going to be like, oh God, man, I really ought to look into that. That's what I think it's going to, build it. But I think it will take some time, and it's not going to be an overnight deal.
Rex, what's your take on timeline here? I mean, do you think like a timeline to mass acceptance?
So I think that has a lot to do with the marketing dollars that are put behind this thing. So keep in mind that alt data is not the retail face of this thing. They supply the data to DraftKings, FanDuel, et cetera. So one of the issues that we had, and I think one of the reasons why it's taken so long to get to this point, is that those retail sports books, they put a lot of money into developing products for NASCAR and F1. And frankly, it didn't give them the return they were looking for. So they said, let's just put that same money back into the NFL and develop new products in the NFL. Now, so if we're being totally honest, when the NASCAR breaks out this in-season tournament next year, I mean, they can say that for excitement or whatever, but that is to build a legal gaming mechanism that way. And so a lot of this is going to be determined, and I'll be interested to see myself, just like I think everybody else will, how much marketing dollars will DraftKings, FanDuel, et cetera, put to this thing. If you have a business, you just put your shingle up and wait for people to walk in, you maybe will do okay if you have a great product, and let NHRA market it that way and let the drivers market it for you. But if you go market and, push your name out there, you have a lot bigger chance to be successful. And so that, to me, is the answer. Is that I'll be curious to see, but a lot is going to have to do with how much marketing money they put into this and how much they really want to pump it out there. And I don't know what that is just yet. We'll find out.
I'm curious, real quick, just for clarification purposes, and any of you guys, Mike included, could probably answer this. But so this will be a standalone platform, Play NHRA. That will be that will be their in-house version of Fantasy King, or whatever the hell they are. DraftKings no. Okay.
Play NHRA is kind of like the initiative.
Okay.
There will be specific products that you will bet through. And like Rex said, alt data is going to create basically the guts and the data. And then that's one thing I've been trying to figure out is who's the house. There's alt data, which is creating the guts. There's US integrity, which is protecting the integrity. There's NHRA sanctioning body. There still is another element out there that is the house. Is it DraftKings? Is it MGM Grand? Is it Betway? There still is a third party that's going to have to pick up what alt data is producing and present it to consumers. And like Rex said, then it's going to be who is going to be that entity that wants to take ownership or at least be the lead dog in NHRA gambling. Do
you have any inside line on are those things in place?
I feel like Betway, since they've already had a relationship in drag racing by sponsoring the NHRA race last fall, they have a relationship with Charlotte Motor Speedway. But I also think MGM Grand is kind of getting in with Charlotte Motor with SMI. So I think there are some people that are sniffing around, and I really feel like whoever does take that leap will be the winner. Because if we found out anything, NHRA fans are very loyal. They will, whoever gives them the opportunity first will probably be the leader for the foreseeable future until someone just does it better or offers a better deal.
Well, we've seen Caesars offered, just as far as last week, offered top fuel only betting. But just my opinion, and just seeing like all these apps as they've been launched here in North Carolina, it seems like DraftKings and FanDuel are the most willing to jump into like a smaller market type of environment, and then also pour the marketing dollars to it, and then also offer like bonus bets and promotions and things. It seems like the traditional Vegas houses that have branched out into apps are a little bit slower to do that, but these like online only ones like DraftKings and FanDuel, that's my hope, is that NHRA gets picked up and promoted by one of those, because I feel like they'll do the better job of it and get behind it more.
Alt has a very good relationship with DraftKings, so that's my guess is that
Can we assume that something's already in place if bets are going to be flying around by March or by the Bristol race?
I hope so. I think so. And to me, I'm looking at it like we've been talking about DraftKings and FanDuel, but I feel like in the last month or 2 months, I'm seeing so many more of these prop bet websites like Sports Pick or, pick your dog. But that's where I think theoretically someone,
Yeah.
Not right now, but in a year, someone could come in and just let you bet on funny car. They could just offer a variety of funny car prop bets.
Yeah, those sites are like just a bunch of individual over-unders on prop bets, like Prize Picks.
Perfect for that.
DraftKings just launched one called Pick Six.
Right.
There's Sleeper. There's like all these ones where you can't even bet on the actual game. You can only bet on the props.
And that's where, going back to 2 questions ago, how this could be good for our sport is if we can get into the gambling universe, prop bets, like when we're racing, theoretically, if we were racing on Memorial Day weekend, a gambling site could offer pick the Indy 500 winner, pick the Coca-Cola 600 winner, pick your NHRA Top Fuel winner. That's where I think it will help our sport, is if we can get into this parlay world where on Sunday, when there's an NHRA race, an IndyCar race, a Formula One race, or
that's a great
an
point.
NFL game, pick these 3 winners.
It'd be huge for our
lump
sport.
NHRA into that big name parlay.
And you start coming up with these ideas of pick 4 Tonys that are going to win on Sunday. Tony Romo, Tony Stewart, Tony Kanaan, whatever. That's where I see the opportunity to build some name recognition. That's the coolest thing that I'm sure Rex hears this too from people, that I had Sean Langdon and Justin Ashley both told me independently of each other at Charlotte that fans were coming up to them at the ropes and engaging them in conversations about being picked for Drag Race Bracket Bonanza. That's where you're starting to see we're getting into the consciousness of fans. Hey, I picked you, that kind of stuff. And we're going to do some more cool things for the rest of the season to just build on that. Our whole mindset is pick your drivers, win cool prizes. It will be free. You can sign up anytime. We have the Denzi's Deets on Fridays. We're probably going to roll out some other, some other promotional tools starting at Indy for the rest of the season to just build that fan engagement and raise the awareness for what we're doing.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I was thinking about, just speaking of fan engagement, is like my mind kind of always goes back to what content can be created around this.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I go back to is, I mean, how big of a deal is Dave Portnoy's personal betting choices for Barstool Sports? I mean, that's a huge part of their brand, is that Dave Portnoy, the president or owner of Barstool Sports, is, he's going to bet $1 million on Michigan to win it all. And he's going to film himself losing his mind when they lose or win or whatever the case may be. So I'm sitting here going, well, I may turn over my credential and not fill out that form just so that I have the opportunity to be able to create some of that content, because I think people would get a kick out of, riding with me for the weekend or whatever. I'm going to bet it all on JFR to get it done in Bristol, or, you know what I mean? And I don't know, like there's some things that have come to mind for me going, all right, I need to think about a couple of these things, or at least explore, because if betting on these races becomes as prominent as I think we all hope it becomes, because that's the goal, right? Like if we get more people involved, we get money changing hands. I mean, I see a lot of upside for the sport. For me, as a person in the media or a content creator, I'm going, hey, I've kind of got to make sure I keep that pathway clear. It's a huge deal for all these offshore betting sites to have Drake going live that he's betting $4 million on the boxing match because they want people to bet $40 because Drake bet 4 million or whatever. Like, I don't want to close the door to that, because I think there's some really interesting content opportunities there. So it's like, I don't know, there's so many layers to it. It's very interesting to me, and I'm anxious to see kind of how it all goes. Will the NHRA bear any responsibility for the marketing effort here? Like, you can't watch any sports programming whatsoever and not see an ad for the MGM Sports or whatever it is, Bet MGM with Jamie Foxx and, Snoop Dogg or whoever else. I mean, there's clearly some real money being spent to promote those platforms. Is NHRA going to have some responsibility to promote this as well?
And that's where their NHRA Play initiative, that is their marketing arm. They're going to be pushing it with their social, with their print, on TV. I'm sure, it will come up consistently on the broadcast. about this. So I think they've talked about pushing their assets. And what we need to do is we need to make sure we need to help Rex find his Mattress Mac, that guy from Houston. That's, you know, and I think that's another marketing opportunity is that, you know, companies will, you know, hey, like-minded gambling companies, you know, that like, hey, you know, bet on this.
I think JT is the Mattress Mac. He didn't get his credential, so he's good there.
Right.
And he can, man, people ride with JT. We can make some great stuff around that.
Right. But I think that's an opportunity for us. And I think the best thing is having the opportunity to come on y'all's show and talk about this. And, you know, having Rex and I, you know, I feel like we've made significant personal investments in what we're trying to do. And now we're seeing some opportunities. Like for me, just on the data side, you know, Drag Race Bracket Bonanza gets data. Now it's predictive data, it's fan data, but we're having thousands of people in our window tell us who they think is going to win first round, who they think is going to win. And we can provide that data, whether it's to Alt Data or to MGM Grand. You know, Rex and I haven't had a conversation because I've wanted to wait until you guys were both on the Wes Buck Show and could talk. Until we're both on the Wes Buck Show and just do it here. Hey, you know, we need to figure out how we can, you know, how my data can help your side and how, you know, vice versa. But there was no way when I got started, you know, we saw each other last year at the Cruises deal. And I was literally
there too. We're the lubricant on this deal.
Yeah, I mean, Wes was signing autographs. I mean, I get it. Whatever, celebrity. Yeah. Avert your eyes, Rex. Don't look directly at Wes. But I mean, I was not going to at that point say, hey, man, you've been doing this for 3 years. You know, I'm the young pup, whatever. But now I feel more comfortable, you know, talking about, okay, here's what at least I think we have, the direction we're going, what's working, you know. So, but I wouldn't, you know, Rex is still a guy that I'm looking at going, this guy's got, you know, 30 Sherpas and he's so much closer to the peak, to the summit of Everest than I am. I'm still at base camp, and we're all just trying to figure out, you know, how we can make it work. So, well, I want to give you both your flowers right now because I think it's badass that you both find yourself in a position where the NHRA is following they're following a trend that you guys were trailblazers for. And I hope you take some pride in that because it's amazing. Personal investments are something that is not lost on us here. Right. And I just think it's fantastic that you guys are having this moment where it's like, hey, look, they're catching on. They're following what you guys are doing. And I think it's an important thing. And I appreciate your willingness to make those investments. And because that's what our sport has been built on. JT makes fun of me when I use the word philanthropic, but if our sport didn't have all these people that were willing to put their money, you know, their own personal resources into this passion project. And that includes Connie Coletta on down to the four of us, right, that are, you know, willing to invest our own resources for the betterment of the sport. I think that's been the magic of this community for 70 years is guys that are doing it for all the right reasons. And I believe that you two fall into that category as well, if for all the right reasons. And I hope that is something that, you know, the NHRA sees as well. And I hope that that's why they're doing it for all the right reasons. I believe it is perhaps long overdue, but I'm glad it's happening. Kind of closing questions. And Mike, I know we're going to lose you to a kindergarten graduation here in the coming minutes.
I'm finally graduated kindergarten.
Mike finally graduating.
Yeah,
it's only taking him
Mike is finally graduating kindergarten. So he's got to go and accept his plaque. I kid. Send our best to Little Miss Caroline, Mike. It's exciting times. But kind of closing notes here, and we can bring JT in if you need to bounce, Mike. But I do just want to say, what are the potential blind spots? We're kind of winding the show down, but that was a question that was posed to me one time. We were sitting around having this big conversation about, you know, we're going to do this and let's do that and let's do this. And a guy that I respect a lot, it was actually Tony Stewart. He looked at us all in the face and he said, what are the blind spots? What are we missing? We need to have a real conversation around what are we overlooking? Do you guys think that there are any blind spots here? I mean, one of the things that I saw in the comments, and I want to thank everybody watching today because we've had some great commentary, some really, really, really fantastic input from the crowd here today. So thank you guys for that. But, you know, how far away are we from the first people throwing a fit because somebody smoked the tires at half track and the track was pretty good and everybody else went down that lane, and did they throw it? I mean, what are there any blind spots that you think we're going to need to be mindful of in the coming weeks, months, years?
Well, I think the answer is, at least in my mind, is the fact that we're not taking cash in a betting booth, right? This is all trackable data. It's all online. So I did see a question that popped up and said, what if a crew member is paid off to sabotage their own driver and they don't actually make a wager, right? The crew member doesn't make a wager. Somebody else makes a wager to do that. Well, if we were just taking cash in a betting booth, then how would you ever track that, right? That's why mostly the U.S. government hates cash, is because it's not trackable. But within an app, within a legal wagering operation that is all trackable, at some point, somebody's going to see the line and says, wait a second, there was a bet here for $200,000. And they've never made that wager before. So I think, we're in this age, and I don't always love it, frankly, that everything's an app. I don't need a smart toilet, for honest, I don't need that stuff, but this is really good for us. And in terms of the gaming space, all the stuff that's out there, and we've spent some time here recently looking at all the AI stuff that can allow us to do things quicker, faster, educate our customers, from that stuff. I mean, what you can do with AI now is pretty fascinating. And so we're trying to get our arms around that and how that can help educate our consumers, but also at the same time, allow us to do things that would spot something that people would do something nefarious. So I'm very excited about what is right on the horizon.
Elon, are you feeling much the same as far as the technology being really the fail-safe that's required?
Yeah, but I think the biggest blind spot is, and I'm hyper aware of this with Drag Race Bracket Bonanza, is not taking advantage of the drivers. Basically, I'm not making any money right now, so I ask the drivers to sign plaques. I have had conversations with them about what potentially could be down the road appropriate compensation for their participation. We are hosting a pre-Champions Banquet event at the Pachanga on Monday as a thank you to all the drivers that have participated all season. So I think making sure the drivers who are basically participants in Drag Race Bracket Bonanza, just by, and also there'll be the participants on the gambling side, just making sure they feel validated, appreciated, they're part of the conversation. I think that's the biggest blind spot, is because, I have like this social contract that's really based on my relationship with them, that we promote, hey, if you win Drag Race Bracket Bonanza, we have plaques that we make every attempt to get the drivers to sign. Well, if a driver just tells me, I don't really feel like signing that, what's in it for me? They will get 0% pushback from me. But that's a valid question. So I always try to, if you're participating, and I've built up goodwill, but that's the thing for me. The biggest blind spot is, what if a driver says, I have, for whatever reason, religious, moral, just economical, says, I don't want to participate in this because it goes against my belief system. You're profiting off my name, my likeness. I don't want to participate. What are the ramifications of that for gambling? And are there, it is, so that to me is, I'm hypersensitive about it with Drag Race Bracket Bonanza, of always wanting to let the drivers know how much they're appreciated, how much the fans appreciate it. And then eventually when we do start making money or, generating revenue or whatever, that I will be hyper aware of paying back the people that helped me build whatever Drag Racing Bracket Bonanza becomes. And Wes,
that's not allowed in drag racing.
And you're one of those people, like Drag Illustrated is one of those people that, when and hopefully this thing becomes a thing, I'm keeping receipts, I guess is what I'm
Well,
saying.
I mean, I think you're beyond the threshold of becoming a thing, Elon, but I do appreciate what you're saying. And I think that you kind of hit the nail on the head because, and I'm not trying to air out dirty laundry, but I do know that that is something that the NHRA has kind of arrived at an impasse with, where they don't have that kind of social, they don't have that. I can't remember what the phrase you just used was, but they don't have that kind of deep personal relationship with these drivers. It's a little contentious at times. It's there's a real air of us versus them, I think, within the NHRA racer base and the NHRA itself. And I do think that's going to be a real important bridge to build, because you're going to need these guys and gals to be willing participants and be excited and be spokespersons, spokespeople for this initiative. Because I mean, every initiative, people follow other people, momentum, mission. You know what I mean? And I think that you've got to get this group of people, probably starting first with those racers and team owners. They've got to be sold on this, and they've got to believe in it, and they've got to have a picture of a bright, shiny future, because that's what we're all pursuing, right? Like we're pursuing this bright new future. And if that doesn't exist and it is not adequately or not well explained, I mean, that's going to be the challenge, in my opinion. The NHRA needs to make, and maybe they already have, and I hope that that's the case, that they've already made it clear, as you were saying earlier in the show, Elon, that, hey, at XYZ moment, we are going to find a way to immediately put money back in the pockets of our team owners and our drivers, because that's something, I mean, they struggle at times to get participation for drivers for media outings and media endeavors because of that broken relationship. So it's like, okay, now we've got this whole thing where not only do you want to use us for media, and we use us to sell tickets, now you want to use us to generate gambling revenue. Like, at what point is there going to be, like, I think the pressure is going to be on NHRA quick, fast, and in a hurry to find some way to show some progress made, whether it's in purses, championship purse funds, more qualifying money, pay appearance money, whatever the case may be. I think they're going to have to find a way in the very near future to get
treating these guys like professionals.
To get the racers excited about it, because that, I really think if you have these guys fired up and they're out preaching the gospel and they're spreading the word and they're energized and enthusiastic about it, I think that will have a significant impact on whether or not the fans buy in. So really, really interesting conversation, guys. I can't tell you guys both how much I appreciate your time and expertise. This was like a educational seminar here today, but it is a long time coming for the sport of drag racing. It does seem like oftentimes our sport's a touch behind the curve, but I find myself every day, and people probably get tired of me saying this, but I really do feel blessed to be in a sport with so much opportunity. These opportunities like this, the ones that you two have had, the ones that I have had with Drag Illustrated and World Series of Pro Mod and everything else that we've done, it's like, I don't know that those opportunities exist in more developed sports, right? I mean, you wouldn't be launching, an NFL bracket challenge because shit, they did it 20, 30 years ago. So it's exciting that these opportunities exist for us. And I'm glad that the people involved are the people involved.
And I will say, I will give NHRA, some credit that when I started, I had conversations about, hey, this is what I'm doing. And, they didn't say I couldn't do it. They didn't really say I could, but they opened up the crack for me to get through that space. And I think Rex probably has a similar, I think there could have been an opportunity for them to come in and be like, no, don't even mention, I don't use any NHRA marks. I'm not there yet. But I mean, they easily could have come in and smothered me, and they gave me, consistently just enough rope to hang myself. And I'm hyper aware of, talking about how I'm doing things and being upfront with them. And I think they understand their own limitations. They're the Titanic, and Rex and I are in jet skis. We can zig and zag much easier than the behemoth can. So, and the other thing that cracks me up is there's so many times the NHRA gets overlooked. They've been very progressive. We've had a digital TV channel for 2 years, and they announced the F1 channel. Oh, F1's going to have a digital channel, and people act like they delivered the baby Jesus. And people are like, wait a second, NHRA's had that for 2 years. We've had this, and it's a little bit of promotion, education, fan base size, But the NHRA has been doing things, and I think now more than ever, they're in a very good position to capitalize on some of the endeavors. I know NHRA has been working on gambling, and Rex can speak to this. I mean, they had to get approval in 50 states with 50 different rules. And then they had to lawyer. I mean, their investment to get to this point is, I have to think, easily in the millions of dollars of man hours, lawyers, all the, to just get here. And they haven't generated
dime one
yet. But they know the sport needs this. And Brad Gerber's been working on, I think he mentioned on the call this week, for 5 years. This is like his Moby Dick,
Yeah.
So
think how much DraftKings pours into advertising and stuff for other sports. I mean, like,
it's crazy.
It's amazing. It's all over. And even ESPN and these shows have got it in the background. I mean, it's unreal, to be honest with you.
There's a betting show for NFL, basketball.
But even like the sports centers of the world and whatever shows are on, sponsored by DraftKings, and then they're pouring money into the commercials. Tune in this Sunday.
Don't think we won't launch a gambling show here on Drag Illustrated in the next 3 months. I mean, because we absolutely will. We'll launch a gambling show, and that'll be a big part of what we do, and we'll lean into it because I want to support.
I gotta get a jet ski so I can ride it over to the KFC.
Yes. Jump on a jet ski, ride it to the KFC. All right, closing here. I do want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors, Redline Synthetic Oils. Huge shout out to the whole team down in Houston, Texas, holding it down for all of us. Real knows real. Make sure you support the companies that support us, and a company like Redline that's supporting racing in all shapes, sizes, specifically here in drag racing, as well as Stroud Safety, Tommy and Anita Cunningham, the whole team up in Oklahoma City, manufacturers of the world's finest 100% American-made safety equipment. Support those that support us. Are we going to be betting on World Series of Pro Mod the first weekend of March 2025? Rex, can we make that happen?
100%.
Let's go. You heard it here, guys. And what about a bracket? Can we get a bracket?
Well, if you got rid of the chip draw, you could. You don't have any bracket stability.
Oh yeah,
that's the deal. Because that was the thing.
Can we do a prop bet or something? We'll come up with something.
That was the funniest thing is people were like, "Hey man, I hope we're doing Drag Race Bracket Bonanza for the World Series Pro Mod or for the Pro Superstar Shootout." And I was like, "Well, I would love to, but there's no bracket stability." Which I've come up with more crazy sayings about this. No one's ever used the word bracket stability before, but
I like it though.
Have it.
I like it.
You have to have that brackets. So
man, because we're changing the game out here, dog.
You are.
Bust that bracket every round. Start from scratch.
I get people that ask about Pro Mod, Junior Dragsters, Flagship Factory Stock Showdown. I go, well, I would love to do it, but there's races where they do Q3 on Saturday morning, and they do E1 5 hours later. There's just not enough time to do. But I do have some ideas for some off-season brackets that are just kind of, they did one in Dallas. Dallas Morning News did like a bracket for like 64 iconic Dallas locations, and they had people vote. And so in the off season, there will be a drag race bracket bonanza, racer versus races, track versus track, event versus event, whether it's a full, 16. So we're going to come up with some cool
everybody mad at you, Elon. You do that.
It's all good conversation.
I'll tell you what, every year when we do the 30 under 30, like we go to PRI with our hard hats on.
Wait until the gambling gets in. Wait until people start betting on who makes the 30 for 30. Trust me.
Great.
Yeah, I like that.
Right. But Rex, can we make this deal live here on the air, though? Like virtual handshake? We're going to be betting. All right. Fist bump. You guys... Winlight bets delivering the real deal for the World Series of Pro Mod 2000.
I'm a witness. That's a binding contract right now. I'll be your witness.
Yeah, it was a Bluetooth fist bump. That's what people just saw right there. Perhaps a first ever.
Who's the first person that did that to us? That said, Butcher, wasn't it?
No,
Bluetooth.
It was Will Mandel. Will Mandel, the former salesperson at Drag Illustrated. It's a funny story. We were walking out of SEMA, right? And SEMA's, it's a C&B scene place, right? And Will's an awesome guy, and he's like super friendly, talks to everybody, never met a stranger. And we're walking out of the SEMA, the main hall, and I don't know their name. Billy Gibbons, the guy from ZZ Top.
Yeah, Billy Gibbons. Yeah.
Oh,
Billy
yeah.
Billy Gibbons is like 20 feet ahead of us, and Will is a lifelong musician. Immediately recognized. I mean, he's impossible not to recognize, right? The big beard, and he's all, like the look, right? So Will starts walking 10x. He's like going to catch this guy, and he gets up to him, and he sticks his hand out to shake his hand, and Billy Gibbons turns around and he goes, "Bluetooth."
Yeah, but didn't touch it either.
But he didn't touch his hand. Bluetooth.
Yeah,
Bluetooth.
Oh.
And
I couldn't remember who did that. I'm glad you reminded me of that.
It was a funny deal, dude. Bluetooth. We'll have to use that whenever I see you next, Elon. We're Bluetooth.
Yes, we're
connectivity
Bluetooth
from here on out. Same with you, Rex. Hey guys,
thank you
so much for joining us.
With us.
I hug you, JP. We're family. We're family. No, we're all family here. We can all hug and sing Kumbaya next time we see you. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, remember to help us spread the gospel of drag racing. Tell someone about the show. Tell someone about a drag race. Take someone to a drag race. Help us bring more people to this incredible sport. Appreciate you guys. Elon, congratulations on all you've accomplished in an incredibly short amount of time with Drag Race Bracket Bonanza. Rex, what you've done with Winlight Bets, trending, you've been a trailblazer here, and we're very proud of you and happy for you and can't wait to see what comes next, guys. Thanks you very much.
Thanks a lot.
See y'all.
Thanks, guys.